A while back I picked up the Warhammer Cursed City box set, but never actually painted any of the models that came with it. So I thought today we'd start a new mini-series of painting with Emelda Braskov. So one of the first things I did was I covered the base of the model with a mixture of crushed glass, sand, and Mod Podge to create a kind of uneven base texture. And then after that fully dried, I coated the whole thing with a slightly watered down brushing of burnt umber. This will give it a kind of muddy dirt appearance. And once that dried, I moved on to some Talassar Blue. This is going to paint the edges of her tabard and cloak, but not the front. This is mostly going to be the inside of the cloak and the edges, just to kind of give the impression that it's blue on the inside. Alright, so now we're going to use some black Templar and do a light coating on all of the cloth sections of the spaces in between her armor, as well as her gloves. Basically, anything that's cloth that isn't her cloak is going to get this color. Next, using some Iyanden Yellow, I coat the beak of her hippogriff shoulder pads. Now using some Cygor Brown, I coat the rest of the feathers of the hippogriff. This is going to be a very nice dark foundation that we can kind of build up with some dry brushes later to instill some extra colors. And now using some Basilicanum Grey, I'm going to paint a light coating over all of her armor. This will give it a little bit of a dingy color, but it'll get built up with a few dry brushes later. And I'm also going to take the time to coat a few of the stones on the base. Any of the crushed glass bits will also have the appearance of stone, so I can quickly pick those out to give the appearance of more rocky terrain. Now using some Unbleached Titanium from artist Loft, I paint over her tabard and her cloak. Now this does have the tendency to not quite do a full coating on the first go, so I ended up having to do 2 coats of this just to make sure that none of the other colors showed through. Off camera, I also used the Unbleached Titanium to paint a light coating on her hair. And here you can see I'm doing a fairly light dry brush over all of the feathers of the hippogriff. This gives it a more gray appearance, but I thought that was really cool for the kind of color effect I was going for, so I decided to keep it. Now using some silver, I do 2 medium dry brushes over all of her armor plates. This will give a nice kind of silver shiny armor appearance, but every time you turn the model, it'll still have that kind of dark and gritty appearance from the Basilicanum. Now using some Guilliman Flesh, I go over her face, but I immediately decided that this was way too dark, so we will touch that up with a little bit of dry brush later to bring out some more flesh tones. Now using some burnt sienna, I do a kind of a light to medium dry brush over the entirety of the base and all of the little stones, as well as this little chunk of pillar. This will kind of help bring out the earthy tones and the texture of the sand. So now using some parchment, I do a kind of a light to medium dry brush over her face, but you can still see the Guilliman Flesh underneath. And then using some Snakebite Leather, I pick out all of the leather straps and buckles that are on her armor, as well as the hand grips and sheaths of the blades. Oh, and can't forget this little leather pouch on her hip. Next, I used some neutral gray to do a light dry brush over the entire base. This brings a lot of light and definition to all of the raised areas, and definitely gives the appearance of light cascading down over all of these stones. And then we follow it up with a light dry brush over all of the feathers, just to kind of give them a slightly more gray appearance across the tips. Now, using a mix of old gold and copper, I did a 2-to-1 mix, 2 parts old gold, 1 part copper. This gives it a nice kind of metallic goldish copper sheen that I thought was really nice over all of the little detail areas of the model. I'm picking out some of the little designs and decals and the hand grips of the sword. Alright, so now we're going to use a little bit, and I mean a very little bit, of Reikland Fleshshade over her face. Now, using a little bit more of the Iyanden Yellow, I do a second coat over the beak just to kind of make it stand out, and then do a very light coating over her hair to kind of give her a blonde appearance. Now, using a little bit of Nuln Oil, I touch up all of her armor sections. This will help to recreate the shadows that kind of got lost in the dry brushing. And off camera, I painted the sword in the same silver that I did the armor. So we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of Nuln Oil to give that some shadow and definition as well. Now, using some Retributor Armour, I'm going to give an edge highlight to a few of the armor plates, but not all of them, just so that it doesn't look too busy. I wanted a little bit of highlight, but not a ton. Now, using some Agrax Earthshade, I do a light coating over her hair, as well as the hippogriff fur and feathers. This will give it a nice kind of earthy appearance, but give her hair a kind of sandy blonde appearance as well. And then follow it up by touching up all of the stones on the base, but not the sand and dirt texture. And then I'll follow everything up with a dry brush of neutral gray over all of the cloth sections of her clothing. This will help bring out a little bit of the edge highlights. And then, using a fine tip brush and a very little amount of paint, I just kind of pick out a few of the raised areas to give a little bit more definition. A few of the creases on the gloves and the pant legs, things like that. And then finally, a little bit of touch up on some of the areas that lost definition on the shoulder pads. And then, to give the cloak an edge highlight, I use a little bit of Parchment, since it's a little bit lighter coloration than the Unbleached Titanium. And just like that, the model is done. Alright, so this has been Emelda Braskov of Warhammer Cursed City. This is a great addition to any tabletop, and I am very much looking forward to using this model in the future. So thank you everyone for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in the comment section, and we will see everyone next episode.